Recently, Lucas, your hometown team, the Sixers, had some semi-big news come up. After Doc Rivers was laid off by the Clippers, the Sixers promptly hired him no less than 5 days later. What were your thoughts on this? Did this move make sense? And do you think that Rivers will actually be able to lead the Clippers to a better result than Brett Brown?
So I am, without a doubt and unequivocally, a huge fan of this move. So I think what the Sixers lacked in the past few years with their, two stars was structure and then good decision making both in game and then when it comes to roster management. They didn't really fix the roster management issue yet, but I can see them being sort of big movers and shakers in the trade market when it comes. But I think Doc Rivers is an upgrade in all those categories, whereas Brett Brown would give Furkan Korkmaz big minutes, like late in playoff games and late in important games when he should not have been out on the floor. I think Doc Rivers is a good enough game manager as a coach and has proven himself to be a good enough game manager as a coach that he'll fix that mistake. He has sometimes struggled when he hasn't had top tier talent, Doc Rivers, but luckily for the Sixers do have top tier talent that he can work with. And when he has had that top tier talent, he's consistently produced really good teams. Even though he hasn't maybe won as many titles as one would expect, he does have a title with the Celtics in 2008. And you can sort of forgive him for after that because after that, LeBron took over the East and was essentially a force to be reckoned with. He kind of ran into the Big Three era. I don't really blame him for not winning titles in those years. With the Clippers, he had to come up against the Warriors, who are arguably the greatest team in basketball history. And that being said, as good as Chris Paul and Blake Griffin were for the Clippers, I don't think they're upper echelon superstars, either one of them. So I think that overall Rivers is a great coach. I think he's a good hire for the Sixers. I think he gives them the structure, organization, and experience that they lacked. And I think he's probably the person to get the best out of Simmons and Embiid and make that team work. Because before, especially last year, it seemed like they were just sort of throwing together talent and hoping that stuck without a whole lot of a greater game plan. But with Rivers, I think that there'll be a strategy moving forward and it'll work out for them.
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing I kind of disagree with there is I feel like when the Clippers were at their height with CP3 and Blake Griffin, I feel like both of those players were top tier talent. I feel like they were top 15 players in the NBA. Maybe that's controversial, but
Chris
I
Paul
think
for sure.
Yeah, definitely Chris Paul. And I feel like Blake Griffin had a few years where he really was dominant. So I'm not totally. So yeah, I'm not totally sold on Doc Rivers as obviously he had a world of talent this year, and it didn't work out. So if you'd asked me 10 years ago, I'd be like, oh yeah, Doc Rivers for sure knows how to run a superstar driven team, but now I'm not as convinced, even though I agree it's an improvement for sure over Brett Brown. I think it's a good hire.
I think with the whole Clippers thing last year, to some degree, you have to chalk it up to it being a coronavirus year. They were kind of rolling going in, and then I just think they sort of lost motivation in the bubble, and it just sort of
But whose fault is that?
Exactly.
Isn't that the coach's fault?
It comes on the coach. Yeah.
No, the players should be motivated themselves.
I think there was a entitlement amongst some players.
But the culture always starts from the top and works its way back down.
No, he needed gamers. His teams are known for playing long postseason series. The year that he won the championship with the Celtics, they played 26 postseason games to win 16, which was a 61% winning percentage. It's the worst winning percentage, or the most games needed to win an NBA title ever. So he needs gamers. He needs people that don't want to play 5-game series, and the Clippers didn't do that. They weren't willing to game.
Indictment of him.
That is. No, it is.
Okay, I see.
He's only good when his teams can't win. Immediately.
Can just barely
I don't know if I love that endorsement of him.
Yeah. I feel both things can be true in that he's an upgrade over Brett Brown, but he's also probably not that good. I don't know. The Sixers really lucked out that he was available and that the timeline just happened to work out, but still I'm just not sold. I feel we've seen that he's not super good at handling locker room beef, right? When Chris Paul and Blake Griffin, that relationship fell apart this past year, as we were just saying. The players didn't seem to like each other necessarily. I don't know if you guys saw the reports recently about players having beef with Kawhi and his load management.
Yeah,
But like, if there's any sort of thing like that going on between Ben Simmons and Embiid, I'm not sure that he'll be able to take care of it either. I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
But
yeah. I mean, but it seems like, and this is like not predictive in any way, but it seems like Embiid and Simmons like each other and get along, and that the issue with the Sixers wasn't so much that like they couldn't manage beef, but just like that Brett Brown had no sort of organizational control, like, and that he himself would like beef with Jimmy Butler, and then just like wasn't a good in-game manager. So I just don't think that there was like a strong presence in the locker room, and I think even if he's not the perfect fit for that, Doc Rivers is better at that than Brett Brown was. So like, I know that's probably the collective feeling that he is better than Brett Brown, but I think I'm a little more optimistic. I think this is probably the best team he's had, or the best two players he's had since he had the Celtics Big Three team. And I think that there's the potential for things to go very well.
I don't know about
I think
that.
Kawhi is
That's
better
a
than
bold
Brown.
claim.
As far as-
Yeah.
No.
Two
I think
players.
collectively, Kawhi is the best player he's had, but I don't think Kawhi and Paul George is necessarily a great duo, as we saw
Also-
Paul George perform in the playoffs.
Also, I thought that Simmons and Embiid didn't get along. I thought that was kind of the point. I thought there was some
I
kind
don't
of
know.
feud
I think
between
that's
them.
trumped up, and maybe
Yeah.
that's just me wanting to believe it and erasing facts because but
No,
don't
I
know.
haven't. I haven't heard about them disliking each other.
Yeah.
Like,
I think there
I'm
was
reading a
something
report right now. 76ers stars Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons don't get along.
Yeah,
The
I
Philadelphia
just saw the same
Inquirer.
thing.
Yeah.
I've
Like,
never heard
I
right
thought I
now?
just saw it in the
Sources,
past. Yeah, this
I feel
is
like it was
20,
the
this is
beginning-
like a month ago.
Oh, okay. I knew there was
Again,
some, there
that
was
doesn't
some
necessarily
stuff
mean anything, but I'm not convinced
Yes.
that they're like buds. I feel like there has been a little bit of tension in the past. I don't know.
Joel Embiid posts happy things about him on Instagram all the time. That's the only source I'm gonna
Okay,
believe.
fair.
So,
that's not a bad point actually.
Joel Embiid's a big personality though, and I think that
Yeah.
the Doc Rivers might have trouble combating with a guy like Joel Embiid as far as personality goes.
Why?
I
He had
don't think
Garnett. He had Kevin Garnett,
Yeah.
Paul Pierce, and they let.
But
him
I
to the
think
finals.
Kevin Garnett. I don't think Kevin Garnett was the same like attitude and
Really?
the emotional player that like Joel Embiid is. He's definitely emotional and he wears his heart on his sleeve. But I think it was more of a place of passion, and I feel like Joel Embiid definitely comes from a place of like he's immaturity. I would say. I feel like Kevin Garnett is far more mature than Joel Embiid is, and Kevin Garnett is definitely more of a leader than Joel Embiid is. I think Kevin Garnett was barking at players more from a leadership standpoint than Joel Embiid mopes and pouts at players from an immaturity and a selfishness standpoint. I don't know if Rivers, he definitely is better than Brett Brown, but I'm not going to sit here and say that the Sixers are even anywhere better off with the same roster going into next year. I think that if they keep the same roster, and Doc Rivers is the coach for that roster next year, they're just destined for another first or second round exit, as Doc Rivers is very famous of doing. In both stretches in the Clippers, he hasn't gotten past the second round. He has just 3 playoff wins with the Clippers, and he's the only coach to lose a series 3-1 3 times. I'm not.
It's my
I
favorite
think,
stat.
That's a wild stat. Yeah,
which is
I
a
never
crazy,
did that.
which is a
Oh
crazy
my
stat.
God.
But I mean, whether he makes the playoffs or not is great. The Sixers have been making the playoffs for years now at this point, and they have to make it to the point where they can either get an Eastern Conference championship and a finals. And I don't know if Doc Rivers is as equipped as we kind of expect him to be. I think that his Hall of Fame resume is definitely kind of falling apart here in the last couple of years, other than the 2008 championship.
Yeah, one thing people don't talk about enough is how he had Tom Thibodeau coaching the defense that year. So, like, is he as well-rounded as it seems, or does he need another really good assistant coach?
Like Ty Lue.
Yeah.
Yeah, look how that worked
Alright.
out.